Now, another thing to watch is non-state actors and corporations, businesses, for example, and their pledges. Cutting methane use is considered by many as the quickest way to mitigate the impacts of climate change, and corporations and big businesses are at the center of this all. Fred, in your opinion, what have been the biggest accomplishments during this year's COP in Dubai?
Well, on day one of this year's COP, two amazing things happened that have never happened before at any COP. One, the whole agenda for the conference was approved on day one. Sometimes that doesn't happen till the end of the COP, believe it or not. And also on day one, there was an approval for the structure of a loss and damage fund, and even some hundreds of millions of dollars put into it. Not enough, but those were surprising and good accomplishments. The other big thing that happened on the side of the COP was very important announcements on methane.
You once said that cutting methane use is the surest route to fight against climate change. Why?
Well, because methane is more than 80 times more powerful pound for pound than carbon dioxide. So when we cut methane emissions, we can reduce the temperatures and the ferocity of cyclones that we would otherwise see in the next 10 years by getting the methane emissions down.
And then what is the percentage of methane use when it comes to the big picture of emission producing gases?
So right now, about a third of the global warming we're experiencing is from methane. But when we look at it on a go-forward basis, methane emissions will warm the planet about the same amount over the next 10 years. Methane emissions from, say, this year will warm the planet about the same amount over the next 10 years as all the carbon dioxide coming from all the burning of fossil fuels on the planet. So this is not a reason to go slow on carbon dioxide. We have to bring those emissions down as fast as we can for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But if we want to see an immediate impact of cutting emissions, that's where methane is so important.
Let's talk about the specifics. You talk about the potency of methane's polluting effects. How so in terms of entrapping heat in the atmosphere rather?
Well, methane is CH4, and that molecule, what it does is it is a very good insulator. It traps heat. Carbon dioxide does the same thing, but ounce per ounce, the methane traps 83 times more heat than the same weight of...
80 times?
More than 80 times than the same weight of carbon dioxide. So it's really potent, and it comes from many things that we do in our economy. It comes from oil and gas, it comes from landfills, it comes from coal mines, and it comes from livestock. Animal agriculture is a big source of methane, also from the burps from the cow.
We've been talking about a just transition. How important is it, and are we seeing it?
Well, we're not seeing fast enough action. The COP process, the world needs to accelerate its move away from fossil fuels and toward clean energy. And in addition, it needs to do that in a way where people can thrive. So we can't hold people down. We need people that don't yet have access to electricity to be able to have electricity. So we need to lower emissions dramatically while at the same time lifting people up. That's the only way to solve global warming that's fair. It needs to be fast and fair.
In some African countries we visited, there's no such thing as solar because they don't have enough sunlight, and they don't have hydropower because they don't have enough wind. So just echoing what you said, I mean, people there got the right to consume electricity. They don't have necessarily those green means.
Well, absolutely. And one great contribution that China is making, it's the leading manufacturer in the world of solar power, and it's making solar panels available at lower costs. So this makes it more practical, both in countries that are sunny and even now in countries that have less sun.
How important is a China-US partnership was evidenced by the latest Sunnyland statements after the Xi-Biden summit in the global fight against climate change?
Well, China and the United States are the two biggest economies in the world. They're the two biggest emitters of greenhouse gases, and they are the two most powerful countries in the world. So there's nothing that could be more important in climate change than having our two great powers cooperate with each other. And it was so encouraging, both in Sunnylands and then here at the COP, to see China and the United States announcing new agreements to cooperate. For instance, on methane, both countries agreed that in the future they will write commitments on how each country will manage its methane pollution into its nationally determined commitments, which is a fancy way of saying our pledges to the world.
Mm-hmm. Out of all the agreements, the articles, as was reflected in the Sunnyland statement and their expressions, endorsements of support by Xi on the Chinese side and John Kerry on the American side, what sticks out to you? What specifics stand out to you as important and promising?
Well, actually, because of the role of non-CO2 gases in warming our Earth up fast, the agreement to include all of them, methane, nitrous oxide, F-gases, into future commitments by both countries is tremendously important, because when the United States and China do that, it sets a good example that everyone should control not just carbon dioxide, but all the problematic polluting gases that are causing this great problem.
Mm-hmm. You have been leading this Environmental Defense Fund for decades, right? And
yes.
You've been working in the field of protecting the Earth for 3 decades?
Yes, more.
More. Tell us about how you see the current state of affairs, and also what is the EDF doing to levitate the situation, or alleviate the situation, rather?
Yes, well, the Environmental Defense Fund is now focusing almost exclusively on climate change, and it's focusing on getting the pollution down, but also helping people thrive, even though the world is already warming and has more ferocious storms. Here at this COP, we are working not only on speeding the transition to a clean energy economy, but also getting the methane pollution down. But also we are working on integrating this conversation with agriculture, because there's ways farmers can be part of the solution. And we are also working on forestry issues. Avoiding deforestation is another big thing the planet, the world needs now, because when our forests burn, that releases a tremendous amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So I'm so happy to see in Brazil, they have dramatically slowed the rate of forest destruction just in the last year.
And also the Chinese experience, the China experience has been much talked about. From your vantage point, what are some of the best practices that you've seen not only in China but across the world that perhaps can be shared with our audience from around the world?
Well, the Environmental Defense Fund has had the privilege to be working in China for almost 30 years. And we have partnered with the Ministry of Environment and Ecology during that time. And we have seen tremendous change in China. We have seen the air in the cities become so much cleaner, which is so important not only for climate change, but for people's day-to-day health. We have seen China emerge as the leading nation in the world in terms of producing solar energy and batteries and wind turbines and electric vehicles. We need to move transportation to electric buses, electric trucks, and electric cars. And China has been a great leader in that. So I am very gratified that we are making progress on this problem. So many times people feel an absence of hope, but there are good things happening.
We're faring short, according to the United Nations report. If you look at the initial conclusion from the global stocktake, the globe will be warming up to 2.4 degrees, far shorter, which is falling short of the 1.5 degree target. Is that trend avoidable going into the next decade?
Oh, absolutely. We need to do far better than we're doing now. You're absolutely right, Guan. The world is falling short. We need to accelerate the transition, and we can do it. Just the other day, 50 of the world's leading oil and gas companies, representing 40% of the whole industry, pledged that they're going to reduce their emissions of methane, this is globally, by 80 to 90%. That was a very big deal. And at the same time, it's true that the United States can do more. It's true that China can do more. Every one of us and every country can do more. And we need to not give up on this task. We need to redouble our efforts, even though a lot of good things are happening.
Fred, thank you very much. And thank you for what you have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Appreciate it. After all, climate change is a global issue. It takes decisive action, it takes global action, and I can't sum it better than the board behind me says, unite, act, and deliver. That is a message constantly echoed by the press corps here in Dubai.